man.
Hey everybody out there in the internet world, it's Creative Convos. We're back with episode 4, and I have Mr. EJ. I'm not going to try the last name because I don't want to butcher it, but
Oh man, no, just give it a try. Just give it a try. Think German. Think like how would Arnold Schwarzenegger say that name?
okay, Hassenfratz.
There you go. You nailed it. You
Starting off
nailed
good.
it.
Starting off good. So,
Yeah.
a quick bio. I'm not gonna get everything because I can't. His resume is so long. 3D motion. I would say he's the king. I'm claiming him to be the king of toon animation. The king. I'm giving him the title, and I'll challenge anybody who thinks otherwise. 3D motion teacher, YouTuber, Twitter. His resume is super long. He's been in it for a while. His style is so unique. I've seen his style copied multiple times. But plugin creator, he makes plugins as well. So I mean, man, I appreciate you coming to the show.
Oh no, thanks for having me on. I think that's it. Like I can leave now. You just really shouted me out, and everyone thinks I'm great. And if I just keep talking, my stock's only gonna go down.
No. But I mean, I like to start with the beginning. I like to always start like with the initial, like just where did you coming out of high school, right? You're walking out of high school. You put down your book bags. Like, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
How did you begin? Like, did you go straight into the field, or how was it?
Yeah, so I have like as I talk to other people, it seems like there's a few of us out there where like I had no clue what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. Like I knew I liked art, I knew I liked drawing. Like I graduated in 2000, class of 2000. Go us.
Awesome.
And my dad and my uncle both worked as art directors at news stations. So like when I was growing up, I'd always go in, see what they were doing. They had like their not Cintiqs, but it's like basically the Cintiq of the day, which was the Quantel paint boxes. Like Google that. That's like old school stuff.
Okay.
And it's basically like just this giant tablet, right? And this CRT monitor that was like color calibrated, everything for broadcast. And you would just have this, Wacom pen and just start drawing and moving graphics and stuff.
Wow.
You had one undo level on that stuff.
Woo.
Yeah.
Tightrope.
So you would have to like save different states, and like they're almost like your save points in Mario where you went halfway and it's like if you die you can go back to that, but like
wow,
you can only have 2 save states. It was a little nuts.
Oh man.
But through that, like I always got interested in like drawing and cartoons.
Awesome.
And that was kind of my mindset. And I was like, I know I like this stuff, and I kind of like what when I go to my dad's work, I see what he's doing. I was like, that looks kind of cool. That looks fun. Doing like over the shoulder boxes and like interstitial animations and so that was my mindset coming out of college. And it's funny because like I hear other people's stories that may be a bit younger than myself, and they're like, oh, these studios, like I knew the studios and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to do motion graphics. And me, I'm like, I didn't even know of that term when I graduated.
Oh wow.
So like I went into college, did fine arts, like didn't go to Art Institute or anything like that. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and it's a good thing I didn't go to that Arts Institute because it currently doesn't exist. It went under because like it was just a shady place where people were just trying to cash in on all the students going there. But I did fine arts, learned sculpture, drawing. Like I knew I liked to draw, but it's like, I wasn't that great to be a cartoonist or something like that. Like I wasn't about to go to Disney or something like that. Graphic design, photography, like not digital photography, like getting in the chemicals and in the dark room and dropping the film on the ground and being like, oh crap, gotta get the film before
in the red room. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean that was really cool to be able to just like something very tactile, but still I had no real direction at all until I guess it was my junior year. My dad had like a intern opening at NBC in Pittsburgh, and he's like, hey, do you want to learn Photoshop and Illustrator, which I was trying to do on my own.
Right.
But like no After Effects. Like I didn't touch After Effects in college at all.
Wow.
We did have a 3D software where I built a robot in it.
Do you know the name of the 3D software?
I think it was Strata 3D. It had a blowfish on it.
Oh.
I think it was Strata. It was. I don't know. I keep forgetting what the heck it is, but I don't think it exists anymore. That's probably how old it is. Did not know about Cinema 4D at the time. But yeah, I knew like that was cool. I liked 3D. It was really, really difficult.
Right.
Like I was like, I don't like this 3D thing when I was in college.
Complicated.
A little bit over my head. But I like was trying to learn Flash.
Ooh.
I feel like I was in that time period where if you wanted to do animation, like you were doing web graphics and you were doing animated banners and you had to learn HTML and
I remember
so like that was my mindset, right? Like this is what I need to learn to do this stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do websites. I don't want to learn how to code. But you know, when I got into college though, like I took HTML classes and I took C++ and I failed. Failed C++. Like I got a D. I think I got a D+.
Wow.
So I don't know if technically that was passing or what. Maybe it was a C-. I was awful in it.
Redirection.
I did not like that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it was through that internship that I like one of the guys that was the After Effects artist. His name's Steve Benton, and he was just amazing with it. And he showed me all the websites. He introduced me to Andrew Kramer.
Oh, everybody's that's like everybody's start.
Yeah, and his website like had 5 tutorials on it at the time.
Wow,
that's like how early my buddy caught up on that. So he kind of introduced me to this whole world of like, here's MK12. Here's Eyeball NYC. Like there was only a few studios doing awesome stuff back in the day. And that kind of just opened up my world to that. So like I got introduced into motion graphics like in college.
Wow.
Like mid-college, you know. So I kind of had to recalibrate a little bit. But growing up, like through college, I was always like, you know, it'd be cool to work at a studio, but like my thing is probably going to be like news graphics or sports graphics or something like that. And that was just like, you know, that was my goal.
Wow. I feel like, so when did you jump into After Effects, or what was your first tool? It's like, okay, I know how to use this. Which is like, was it Photoshop? Because a lot of people use Photoshop was like the first tool. Like, okay, I'm good in this, and that kind of, you know, grandfather some knowledge is in. But was it After Effects, Photoshop, or did you just jump straight into Sim4D and you just kind of lived in that world?
Oh my God, no. my first thing that I felt really comfortable with was Photoshop, and that's solely because when I was interning and when I got hired part-time at NBC, like I was just doing stills, still graphics, like we're talking over the shoulders, full screen graphics of like, you know, it's news. So whoever got murdered that day or whatever, you like put a gun in there and a knife or whatever.
Start a hardcore, straight guns and knives.
It's never good stuff for news. You know? It's not like, here's a puppy doing a trick. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff I would do, like over the shoulder graphic, which was good because like graphic design, I took one class. So I wasn't very strong in it at all. So just being able to learn Photoshop and just focus on a single frame and try to make it look nice, that like that really helped me, you know, it has to have foreground, middle ground, background, like, all those concepts that like, you know, really like college kind of, I don't know. Most of what I know right now is not because of college. I'll tell you that much. So I learned a lot on my internship for sure.
So then you jump into Photoshop, you get comfortable there. Internship, you're doing murder graphics, just start straight hardcore story. Loving it. And then so from that, when did you jump into was it After Effects or Sim4D? Would you jump into your next program? When did you jump into motion, I guess was my question.
It was After Effects.
Okay.
And that was hard for me because number one, like I just started feeling comfortable like designing a frame, you know, but then it's like, oh, now I have to design like 300 frames in an animation, and it's like, how do I carry those principles across 10 seconds or 15 seconds, and like how do I tell a story? And that was just like, that was really hard for me, like and I would try to sit down and really what at the time it was like, I just want to learn how to do a cool thing. So there was this website called ayato.web, Ayato at web.
Okay.
And I think it's still up.
Okay.
Let me see.
Yeah.
ayatoweb.com. And this dude, he has CS5 project files and like all these really cool motion graphic tips and stuff like that. And this goes back. This is AE 5.5.
Ooh, the classics.
Yeah, so it had the radio tower thing on it.
I think I actually. It was like, my memory serves me correct. It's like a radio waves, and like waves are coming out, and then the text kind of slide. I think the text was like yellow, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. That was. I feel like After Effects, when you first get in, it's a lot of buttons and doohickeys, right? It's a lot of what's going on, because I started doing from editing, right? So I started in Premiere.
Okay.
And so it was like, okay, someone's like, yo, jump into After Effects, whatever. I said, all right, cool. So I jump in there. It's like, wait a minute. It's like everything, that things scale different and things move different. And then, I think that just getting things to come onto the screen, not just boring. You know what I mean? Just sliding from left, like, oh my God. And then, so what I started doing, when I really was like, I want to get good in this motion graphic thing. So I started going to movie theaters. I bought a ticket and I would sneak into the movie and just watch the beginnings of stuff. Like, because they used to have like, the titles would come on, and then there's like the credits would come on. I was like, okay, I just went from movie to movie. I just watched the beginning. Just see all the good stuff, right? Just kind of, because I feel like when I got started, it wasn't a lot of inspiration out there. Like, you couldn't just go on YouTube and find it and get like, years of just content. You had to kind of go and seek content. There was a lot of books, and I'm just a visual learner, so books was very like, sit there and like reading a book on how to do motion. It never worked for me. I know it worked for other people, but it just never worked for me. It's like,
Yeah, I don't learn like that.
Yeah. It's like,
there was no videos.
Yeah.
There was 5 Andrew Kramer tutorials that you could choose from, and just keep rewatching them.
Keep rewatching them. Yeah. I feel like Andrew Kramer, shout out to that guy, but I feel like he did a lot for just bringing, I don't know where he gets knowledge from, but just bringing a lot of the core basic mechanics of After Effects, a lot of the core fundamentals that you can get in there and kind of. And I think a lot of people did it, but it's just like, I want to make something cool. Don't tell me how to use a program. Show me how to make something cool using the program. So
right. Like, he's the MacGyver of After Effects.
Yeah, I mean,
like, let's get this duct tape and this squeegee over here.
And then I found out about render times. What was your first introduction to like render times? Like the fact that you don't just hit go and you just walk out. It's like, oh, there goes. Man, when I first got computers, my computer was very slow, so it would take me like 6 hours to see what I did. It's like, let's see how this turns out. I mean, it's not, with 3D, it's not much different. So how was your feeling like towards the whole rendering?
So in the world of news graphics, like, you get the orders at 1 p.m.
Okay.
And then, you have the 5 o'clock news. So you got like 4 hours to get that done. So if you could just not, I would say it's the fast food of motion graphics, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time to flambe something or to marinate something. Like, you need to just get that meat on the grill and just get it the hell out.
Wow.
Slap some ketchup on it.
Wow.
So yeah, that was, to be honest, that kind of mentality where it's like, I need to do this thing. It needs to be 5 seconds. It's an interstitial graphic. It's a transition. Like, I just need to do that thing. I need to get it out. That was really hard for when, like, you're such in that go mindset, where it's like, hey, you can create a 4-course meal with all of these different flavors and ingredients, and you're like, I've never done that before. I don't know what these ingredients do. I don't know what tastes good if you mix them together. That was kind of hard to adapt to, like, oh, I have a week to get this done.
Wow.
Like, I'm just so used to what my creative process was like, okay, I need 3D text. What's the title? How do I lay that out? What's some crazy background stuff? Like, most of the workflow, like, we had these CDs with just animated backgrounds on them, right?
Wow.
So you would just, like, get an animated background. It was like SD, and it would loop. So it was like fractal noisy kind of crap.
Yes, the old school stuff. Yes, love it.
Yeah, and then you would just put animated type on it, not 3D, just like 2D type, and then like again, because murder graphics, you just put a gun in there,
Yes.
slap it right on there.
I'm loving the term motor graphics. I'm using
And
that.
like the caution, the police tape,
Yes.
flashing police.
Oh man.
So it was a lot of like pulling stock footage, using masks,
Right.
overlaying different things, and just slapping type on it. Like that's what I did for, you know, pretty much the first 6 years of my being in motion graphics.
Good foundation though. Learning the
Yeah.
core, learning the software. So like things are getting like real time. So my question is this, right? You got Redshift, RT or RT Redshift, I don't know which way. And you got Octane coming with, I think, Brigade, right? Or something like that. And then you have, I mean, on the Blender side, you got Eevee, and then you have it's like a lot of Unreal's in there, real time render. So I feel like the future is going to be more real time, right?
There's URender too.
URender is super awesome.
Yeah,
super awesome too. I think they're doing a lot of stuff. So my question is this: so with the future becoming a lot faster, right? With all these different renders are coming out, how do you think that's going to affect the industry as a whole?
Well, I think you're seeing it already, like seeing it used in live production, you know, concert visuals. You have Dead Mouse like live producing his own motion graphics for his own show while DJ. You know, that's crazy. I think it allows people to, like, for me, like I learned how to light with placing a light, hitting render, and I had ambient occlusion on, and you'd literally wait like a good minute to see, like, and at a certain point you're like, number one, I'm running out of time. And number two, this is getting boring. Screw it, this works, whatever. But now, like, if you're learning those basic fundamental, like if you're learning 3D, holy cow, can you just jump in and just like, what's that look like? What's that look like? Does this work if I move this light here? Like, does this, what about volumetrics? And you can really dive deep into like all these photoreal concepts without the downtime of, so I think it's going to be even easier to learn 3D. I think it's I think where the real thing is going to be interesting, where it's like, you know, do clients now think that we could just crank things out like it's nobody's business? And like, yes, the end thing is faster, but that process to get there is still as long as it's, you know.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm worried about, right? So you have more capabilities, right? But at the same time, it still is. I feel like, now we can do a lot more. It's not like, okay, the job is getting easier. It's like, okay, we're going to cram more on the person, because I feel like when technology scales down, the workload kind of scales up, oddly enough. You just take more people. They're using less people to do the same job because they think the technology offsets it. So that's my concern. I feel like we got the photorealism. Like, I've seen some renders online that were like photoreal. Like, if you scroll down too fast, like, was that a real person? Was that 3D? But I feel like with the emergence of like a lot more stylized render, like a lot, I think, I forget what game is like killing these renders. I can't think of something, but like Spider-Man and a lot of the stylized, I feel like that has, okay, let me ask you, this statement is true or false? This stylized rendering has it's limitless, right? Versus, unlimited. Versus photorealistic is limitless. It has a limit to it. Like, you can't, you get to a certain point when it's just, real is real, right? I feel like stylized render is the future of, I guess, rendering. Well, what's your thoughts on because I know you're the king of stylized rendering. You did tooling, shading, and stuff like that. What do you feel like is the future, and what's your thoughts on because a lot more stylized rendering now? I feel like the road is kind of splitting both ways.
Yeah, I think with that, and this could be debated, I almost think that, yeah, you're seeing a lot of sketch and tune. You're also seeing Blender with grease pencil. I'm seeing a lot of really cool stuff there. Right. And I think it's still hard to get stylized stuff because until grease pencil, there was no way to really, unless you got a VR app and Quill or something like that, there was no way to like paint in 3D. Like Cinema 4D doesn't have that. Right. So if you want like that crazy stuff in Spider-Man, where they're literally like some of those shots, like they're literally just going and cell animating on top of the render, which is super cool, super awesome. And I think, like, yes, Spider-Verse is pushing things in a new direction. The new Sony film with the family on a road trip. They
Oh
got this like
yeah.
hilarious looking pug
Yeah,
in
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Like that looks like it's going to be really cool far as the aesthetics go and the style.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, Sony Animation's real. Like they just came out of nowhere and are just
Yeah.
like making amazing stuff. It's like okay,
Yeah, I feel
um,
like I feel like they're giving Pixar. I know it's early. I know it's trying to be a prisoner of the moment, but I feel like they're giving for. Like I feel like Pixar is the king of animation, right? In my opinion, Pixar, Disney.
bro, sure.
But I feel like I've been at the top of the hill, and then you have Sony out of nowhere, just like we're just gonna do a whole nother version, a whole nother look and feel of animation for 3D animation. You know what I mean?
Isn't it funny that like I feel like since Spider Verse came out,
Right.
and I went to Blend where they actually had one of the like art directors
Mm-hmm.
that worked on that, and he like got halfway through his presentation and ran out of time, and I was just like, oh man,
Yeah.
and like the next slide was like animation smears, and I'm like, oh, you
Yeah.
don't get to see how they did the smears.
Oh yes.
But I think like that. I mean, you go on YouTube and there's like 5,000 different videos on
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
here's what they did animation wise, and I feel like that's never been done on a Pixar movie where there's been so much geeking out on the
Yeah, that's
animation,
true.
the style of animation, and
That's
other.
true. The ripples.
And that's like I've discovered things that I never even thought about, like animating on the twos, and like
Yeah.
if you because even changing up, like, well, Spider-Man was like the inexperienced Spider-Man
Right.
was animated on the fours because he's more
Yeah.
like frenetic and stuff, but then like the real Spider-Man
Yeah.
is like really fluid in the
So many
animation. I'm like,
details. Yeah.
that's crazy. Like I've never thought of how like the frame rate
Right.
telling a story.
Yeah, and I feel
you
like
know?
with the stylized aspect, you can go. It's just it's unlimited, right? You can just keep going. I feel like if you had a real, you just like I'm gonna do a photorealistic animation. It's like you can't go too far. It's like you have to try to mimic photorealism, but like I feel like in the next 2 years, somebody can just do something totally like you said with Greek Pencil. They can do more 2D, 3D combination, and they can just have more hand painted backgrounds on top of 3D objects that are moving. So I feel like there's so many things you can do. You know what I mean? You can take in like I seen a video where somebody took a character and like it drove over the guy and it mixed it with 3D, and it was super awesome. But here's my
Yeah.
issue. I feel like now I don't know, but I feel like I want Sketch and Tune to be real time. That's like one of my dreams, like a real time version.
You and me too, brother.
Just a real time, because I feel like because Sketch and Tune is something you need to re-iterative. You need to be like tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. So if there was like even I know on the Blender side they have and I messed around with it and it was pretty cool, but I feel like Sketch and Tune just so for me it's I mean watching a lot of your tutorials, by the way, just been watching and pausing and trying and watching, pausing and trying, but I feel like there's a lot of capabilities there with Sketch and Tune. So
There's a dude called Everfresh Design on Twitter. I believe his name's Sebastian. He, in my opinion, he's like the king of Sketch and Tune and stylized
What?
shading. Yeah, I'll share some links. There's
Okay.
two dudes that are like amazing with the Sketch and Tune style and getting some really creative, clever looks out of it. But it does say something that you have people really pushing
Right.
Sketch and Tune as far as like look dev and stuff, and it's a renderer that has literally not been updated in like 8 years,
Yeah.
maybe more. Definitely hasn't been updated majorly in like 10 or something.
Yeah, it def can use just honestly give me real time and I'm happy.
And that's the thing too, where like actually I'm working on finishing up my new course for school of motion, and it's all like intermediate advanced C4D stuff, and we have this lesson about mixing 2D and 3D, and I teach Redshift in the class, a little bit of Octane.
Right.
And it's just like, number one, Redshift doesn't even have a cell shader at this point.
Yeah.
Like you have to like really bash together a bunch of different nodes to try to even recreate it, like a diffuse shader.
Been there.
And it's just kind of dumb. Where it's like, well, number one, it renders a little bit longer than Sketch and Tune would if I would just do this there. And there's no outlines except for like for now. Which I saw one of your Tune sketch or Tune experiments on your YouTube. What was that using?
So I was using Octane, right? So I was like, when it came out, and I was like, okay, let me jump into this and see what I can do. and it's a pretty good first strive into it. But I found a lot of issues like coming from Eevee, right? It's quicker to learn Eevee because Octane to me is just like easy to learn. But the capabilities of the line art and some of the textures and it's not there. I try to put I want to see what it feel like in an animated background. There's a I'm forgetting everything. There's a show on Netflix that has this super cool. It's like Beastars. If anybody heard of Beastars for Netflix, it's a really cool. When I first watched it, I was like, "Is this hand drawn?" For like the first 10 seconds, they got me. But it's 3D, but they have like hand drawn backgrounds, and it's really seamless. It's done very well. But so it inspired me to go ahead and try it. But I mean, it's really good. And I've heard that Octane's gonna come out with an updated version of that. And I was like, okay, I'm waiting on EJ's tutorials, but let me just wait on those. But yeah, so I just feel like the industry's craving it, and I feel like on Sim4D side, they have to be the champion of it because they are kind of like the cornerstone of motion graphics in 3D. So you have to kind of champion that. If anybody in Maxon's listening, we're but I feel like I think in the next year everybody's cranking away. I was trying to convince this guy who's a coder to do a sketch and tune on renderer. So I think he knows what I'm talking about. I was like, yo, you gotta do a sketch and tune, implement it to your render. But I think that's coming out. But you speak about teaching. Your tutorial. I watch a lot of tutorials online. Your tutorials are seamless. It's like, oh, this is good. Your rate is like. I feel like there's a certain speed you have to hit where you're fast enough that you keep my attention, but you're not too slow. And I'm like, let me skip forward. Then it's like, it's re-rendering. I should just watch. So how did you get into teaching? Like, what was your first? How did it organically happen, or how did you get into it?
Oh no, I have to thank Matthias Omatola over at Maxon to doing that, throwing me into the fire. Okay. So how it all started was like I was watching a lot of Nick Campbell on Grayscale Gorilla, and I thought it was I lived in DC at the time, and the community there as far as motion design was not very big, and a lot of the motion graphics people that did any type of work worked for government, so like they can't even show their work usually.
Oh yeah.
And then there was like Discovery was the huge thing, and there was only a handful of studios, and they're all working on Discovery Channel graphics and stuff like that. So I only knew like a handful of people that I would like keep up with, because what Nick did at Grayscale Gorilla was like he kind of shone a light on the Chicago motion design scene.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh man, like that's so cool. Like he's got this cool community, and you would see like Chris on there and like all his other buddies in Chicago, and I'm like I want that. Like I want to just go to a bar after work and talk nerdy about motion graphics and stuff. And so I did discover that there was a motion graphics meetup in DC that was just it was more like an animators meetup.
Okay.
Where it was all types of stuff like hobbyists and stuff like that. So I would go to a couple of them, and they had this one where it was sponsored by Maxon, and they were looking for Cinema 4D artists to present. And this was during the phase of like, I really want to get active in the community. Like the tutorial thing looks cool. Like I love that Nick's doing that stuff, and I just want to connect with other people. So me and my other buddy, like I literally only knew one other person in town at the time that knew Cinema 4D. So his name's Dave Glanz, and I was like, Dave, do you want to like do this presentation stuff with me? Because I've never presented before in front of people outside of public speaking class in college, which I got a C in. So he was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And we're like, you know what? We've never done this before, but we're doing it, and we're doing it together. So at least we can. If we both fail, at least we'll have something to laugh at afterwards. So we go, and a lot of ums and ahs and like cold sweats, and I got through it. And little did I know that like they were recording this stuff for Maxon, and I was like, oh god. And like a few weeks later, I get a call from Matthias, and he's like, hey, it's like, I saw your presentation at the DC Animator meetup. He's like, do you want to present for us at Maxon NAB or at NAB in Vegas? And I was like, are you sure? it wasn't Dave that you thought was good. 'Cause, like, I didn't think I was that good. And he's like, no, we'd love to have you out there. And I'm like, oh crap. I was like, well, yeah, okay. Like, I can't not do that, even though I was deathly afraid. So I said yes.
Okay.
And then I had like 3 months to kind of get my head right. And that's when I started doing practice runs of what I wanted to cover. And I was like, you know what? I also saw Joran from Pixel Lab started doing tutorials at the time too. And I was like, that's cool. Like, that's cool. He's doing that. Maybe I feel like this was right at the period where like you started to see other people pop up other than like Nick and Kramer and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, let me just put this stuff on Vimeo, whatever, and we'll see what people say. And it's good practice for me anyways. So I put and I still have those tutorials on my website. So if anyone out there, like, I want to encourage anyone that is like super afraid of doing it or they don't think they're good enough, go watch my very first tutorials. They are god awful. And I keep them up there for a reason. So everyone can see where I was at when I first started. And like, I've seen people do their first tutorials and they're like better than me right now. So I really encourage anyone who's thinking about doing it, just do it. And just, you'll get better over time. But I cranked out a few tutorials, did the NAB live thing at NAB, and met like all these people that were from big studios, and everyone's like, so what do you work at? What studio you work at? I'm like, I work for a local ABC station in DC. I do news graphics. I do murder graphics.
That got your respect. I do murder graphics.
Murder graphics, yeah. Don't mess with me.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was like super humbling because that was my first taste of like, there was no other news graphics people there. Like, these are big deal studios, and I just felt totally out of my element. Like, it's like, I don't belong here. Like, what am I doing here? But I think that's like one of the great things that Matthias and Maxon's doing to this day, where it is bringing people from all different backgrounds and ethnicities even, and everything, and bringing everyone in and making them feel welcome and empowering them. And like, if I say this to Matthias, and I say this to Paul Babb at Maxon, like, if it was not for them, if it was not for Matthias like giving me that opportunity, I would not be right here right now, like, literally.
Awesome.
So I think people should, if they definitely want to try doing teaching or training or something like that, like, reach out to Matthias, do your YouTube videos, like, just do it, because what's the worst that can happen? Like, it's nothing to be afraid of.
All right. Yeah. That's
like, you don't have to be afraid of being an artist. You have to be afraid of being a bull rider, because if you screw up, you're gonna get gored. So yeah, you have legit fears there.
Yeah. I mean, I checked out your school, and I'm signing. I'm like, it's super. Like, if it's based off your tutorial, it's super intuitive. Like, a lot of sites are going like, what's going on? It's like, what did I click on? Is this a class? Is this a seminar? What are you checking up? So I think going to your website, I don't know if you design your website or orchestrate your website. It's just very like, okay, it's seamless. I get it. It's a comfort. It's not a like get you anxiety. Like, what am I buying the right thing? What is this I'm clicking on? So I applaud you on that. But I've noticed your plugins as well. So you get into the world. Not only do you go and you teach. And you do. So now you're doing plugins. How did you just like, oh, there's nothing for this, let me make another? Are you made in your, I mean, how does that, how did you get into world plugins?
So my very first plugin was called Text Edge Effects. And that was basically out of need to just create really cool, like, 3D logo, 3D text really easily with like cool bevels and stuff. And then finally, 10 years later, Cinema 4D updates their text to have like cool chiseled text, and it's not like you have to model it from scratch. So it was just, it actually stemmed from like one of my first tutorials where I was like showing this technique of like, here's a Motex thing, and then you can like put a sweep spline on it, and you can get like really cool like beveled edges and cool text looks, and basically it was like trying to recreate a lot of like the like Marvel 3D titles and like Iron Man back in the day, like the Versed Iron Man, and like the crappy Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and all that kind of stuff. I was like, that's really cool, because that was, that's what I worked with every day was
Right.
3D text, so I made that, and had help with a really talented Espresso developer, and I think he did a little bit of C++ in it, or Python. I don't know.
That's awesome.
But I was basically the creative director on that. Didn't do any of the hardcore work. But I mean, that was like my first foray into plugins. And then I don't even know what I did after that. I think I did Storage Bin, which is like a save state, like save undo states. So you can like go back a bunch of states.
Oh, yes.
So you don't like run out of undos. Or if you're
Yes.
modeling and you're like, well, I got it to this point, I'm going to make this editable. So I want to make a copy of that and save that. That's basically what that did. And then I just got into like After Effects scripts, just because like I found myself, as I was doing sketch and tune stuff,
Right.
like I wanted to do, like, my first After Effects script idea was like, I want that animated boil effect to not me be doing it every single time, and like
Right.
adding turbulence displace and posterized frames and da da da. So I hired this guy, very talented guy, Shinsuke from Japan, and he developed it, and that was like my first After Effects thing. And then I did one where it's like, oh, I want that really cool, like grainy edged kind of thing that
Right.
was
Yeah. Shaded.
really cool.
Yeah.
The grainy shading, and shade it. And actually, for anyone that really loves shaded, grainy edges and stuff, check out I am Lirona on Instagram. She is amazing. She did a Cinema 4D presentation. She also does some very lovely sketch and tune stuff with like hatch shaded edges, and just cool. Really beautiful work.
Awesome. Awesome. So I mean, I feel like you doing a lot, and I mean, you seem so chilled and just kind of like you have such an LA vibe. How do you? Because it's a lot going on. You have so many issues in the public. You have just so much going on. How do you? I know, because I talk to a lot of artists, and I notice artists have this. It's weird because they get so stressed and they don't necessarily have a way to just kind of relieve their stress and chill out. And there's like a lot of anxiety in the industry because you got deadlines, and you're constantly quote unquote judged on how good you are. Like, oh, that doesn't look good, or that doesn't look good. So how do you kind of balance it? What's your downtime look like?
Just get really angry on some murder graphics, man. Like blood splatters. My downtime, like since quarantine, I got my Apple Watch, right?
Okay.
You got to close your rings every day, right? So like since quarantine, like every single day I will jog like 6 miles or something like that. And like I've gotten to the point where like if I don't work out, if I skip a day, like it's almost like people that smoke cigarettes every day and they're trying to get off cigarettes, and they just start losing their temper, and they start stressing out, and they're not themselves, and they're just grumpy. Like that's me at this point, where like if I get stressed out during the day, like I need to take a jog and blow off steam and just let my mind wander. And that's actually helped me creatively, because and it's something I tell my wife all the time. I was like, I really need to start jogging in the middle of the day, because I'll hit this creative block, right? Hit this creative wall, and then I'll step away from my computer. I'll go for a walk, or I'll go jog. And while I'm jogging, it's like, holy crap, that's a good idea. I'm going to like take out my notes app and start writing stuff down. And I found that's really helped my creativity. Even like listening to podcasts that have nothing to do with motion design or art in general. That's really helped me kind of get outside perspective of, things that, especially as I'm working at School of Motion now, like just thinking of more like creative and like community. How do we get people involved? How do you teach better? Like, how do you motivate people to learn? That's been really interesting for me. But like, that's how I try to keep fresh. Because I find that like, if you start diving into Instagram and just keep scrolling through your feed, it starts to be like such a bubble. Where it's like echo chamber of the same styles. And what I've started doing actually is on Instagram, just following like sculptors and ceramics artists and illustrators and people who make like little stuffed animal things. And
So that's another interesting thing, like getting inspiration from outside the field, because you don't want to become redundant with everybody else in the field. And it's,
Right.
yeah, I think sculptors and stuff like that, I think just getting outside your bubble and bringing things in, I think that's kind of essential. So let me ask you, so if you're a person coming into the field, like you're like, all right, this is awesome, I seen EJ stuff, I want to be the next EJ, how would you
Don't do that.
how would you what would be your first step? Would you just like, okay, sign up for your classes? Would that be the first step, or should you intern? Like, what would be your, just watch a couple videos? What would, download some software, some trials? What would be your like first step to do?
So I think one of the things that really helped me get up and running was like when I got in, especially 3D, like my job was to do news graphics. And outside of that, like I didn't go home and do personal projects at the time. Like I had a 9 to 5, I did that. And now it's like, I know very few people who do that and like don't do like something on the side or have a side hustle or work in freelance or whatever. So it's really interesting how things have changed from literally just like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think the big problem for me was like I learned 3D because I needed to do 3D type for news graphics. But then once I went freelance, I started doing sports graphics where they needed 3D text and like some, you know, like a football, 3D football or whatever. And it was really hard for me to like try to figure out like, okay, I did this because that was my job. Like, do I necessarily like animating 3D type all day? And if I don't, what should I start doing? And then what I started doing was just Grayscale Gorilla tutorials. Like, hey, Nick did something that's really cool, I'm going to do that. And it was never, am I doing this because I like this, or am I doing this because if I upload this, this is gonna like get a lot of likes on Vimeo at the time, because Instagram did not exist. So I think once I had to, and I think this is something that everyone should do so they have more of a purposeful learning path, is discover what styles you like, what artists inspire you. And that's really helped me as far as like, I've only started to develop like, and I hate saying this, like a style. I don't think I have a style. Like I put giant eyeballs on things, but that is a, you know, that's an outcome that like I like doing now, and people have like associated that to me. So I'm like, I'm going to stick with this.
There you go.
And doing little characters and stuff like that. So I think discover what you want to do in that application, and then go learn those things that you want to do. Because if you're like me, you just start hoarding all these tutorials and you're just spread out in so many different directions, and you don't quite know where to go, and you just never really can master any, or even try to master something. But I will say that for 3D, like it's very, very important to like learn the interface, learn lighting. Lighting is one of the most important things in 3D, and that's something that I literally only started to really care about like maybe 3 years ago, and I've been using Cinema 4D for 10. So this whole time it's like HDRI, turn on GI, that looks good.
I like the aspect of lighting because I came from a more of a cinematography background, and it was like I couldn't afford all this stuff. You know, with you're just like, I could throw a light over here, a 60-foot light over here. I could bounce. Like, oh man, I'm finally rich. So I feel like, especially with Octane and Redshift, you can just drop lights everywhere. You don't want to use too many, but I feel like the fact that you're in a 3D world, it gives you the ability to create your own, I guess, mini world where you can have all sorts of lighting and textures and things that doesn't exist and stuff. You just break rules and make rules at the same time. So let me ask you, would you get into, I know you're branching out on so many different things. Are you looking to get into, like to in movies and stuff like that, be like a creative director or things of that nature? Because you have such a, like you have such a nice iconic style that I feel like, especially at the time right now where people are getting more into stylized, is that something you looking to get into, or?
Well, I am a creative director right now at School of Motion. So I think that like movies, I never, like maybe short films, you know, like cartoony stuff. Like I love little cartoon. Like I've never done, like there's just the thought of doing a short film that's like 5 minutes long terrifies me.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And and this is something I've only really started to do recently, where like for my class, for the course I'm developing right now, I've had to, like, I'm creative director on it. I'm like also the author, like the instructor. So like I kind of have total control over what I want to do. And for some of the like the exercise, so every lesson has a exercise where we give the students to like, hey, you learned this thing, now try it out on this project file.
Yes.
And what I've had to do is like come up with fake client briefs and like what's a 30-second animation. So it's only until like just recently where I'm like, okay, I need to come up with a script. I need to come up with like, you know, storyboards of like what's going to happen, like what are the visuals. And like I found that to be really, really fun. And I think I got a little taste of what that's like to like, maybe I will do like, you know, I'll start with like a 30-second story or something like that, like short film. But I do enjoy that. And it's something that, again, coming from a news background and like as a, like doing tutorials, I feel like I was always like, okay, I did this thing, or I did that, even in Sketch and Tune, I'm like, I did that style, now on to something else. So I never really drilled down deep into certain areas because I've just been so, okay, did that, let's learn something else.
Awesome.
So I never had to write scripts for anything or tell stories, and I found that like that was something that I severely lacked, is like you'd make all this stuff but like what's the point, like what's the story? And I think that's the one thing that you'll start to see being more and more important is number one, like how's your soft skills, how do you deal with people? Because when you're seeing like amazing artists on Instagram and you're like, holy crap, how do I stand out from that? It's, you know, it comes down to like what's the story you want to tell, how creative are you, how not I guess original, you know, somewhat original, that could be like through stories. You know, like take that astronaut render and do something crazy with it. Just don't be an astronaut render.
You gotta have one of those in portfolios though.
It's a mandatory thing. It is.
So from a technical, I know everybody wants to know, everybody's like, yo, you gotta ask, what computer are you using? Are you a laptop guy? Are you a desktop guy? Are you a PC guy, Mac guy?
So this is where everyone's gonna laugh at me. Like I have a trash can Mac Pro on my desk right now from 2013.
Oh, the
and that's
classic.
what I'm rolling. But it's like vintage. It's gonna be vintage pretty soon. But I have like a external GPU that's got a 1080 Ti. I can run Octane Redshift. But I think that goes to show like don't let your current hardware or software or whatever like limit you, like, because that's kind of the trap I think we get into a lot of times, is where if we're not good at a thing, like, oh, I'll buy this thing, I'll be
try
better.
to buy a way out.
Exactly. So like, yes, I think it's more and more important to like this, like especially right now, like for real time and even not real time, like to render out like whatever David Aryev's doing. He's got like his own render farm and it still takes him an hour per frame. So yeah, I'm not the greatest person to talk about hardware specs with, but I am planning on going PC once I'm done wrapping up my course, which should be in a month or so. So that'll be fun. Like we'll have this whole EJ Goes PC.
Yes, that's awesome.
Little series on School Motion probably.
I went PC and I'm running a Razer laptop, but I went PC and I would tell you that it's a lot faster. It's just a lot. The interface is. I'm still a Mac guy when it comes to interface. It just feels like it's just more intuitive. But I mean, once you get down to the renders and whatnot, and it's just a lot. Especially you can get like a beast of computer for like $5,000 now. So I'm like, man, I want to, I don't know, shortcut a lot of the rendering problems and like the reiterativeness and like, because you just want to be intuitive and just go and go and go. But yeah. So let me ask you a question. I know we talked about it. I'm kind of jumping back, but what is your opinion on going to college for 4 years versus taking courses, like just going through it and doing more e-learning style? I guess everyone's e-learning now, but when things get back to normal.
Well, I think that's the interesting part. Like I said, in my experience, and everyone has their own experience, and I think it's a very personal choice. I don't think, everyone it could be successful just doing online courses. I mean, you're seeing that right now where some people, like, they literally go to a college because they need to get their butt kicked in gear and they need to get motivated by someone, and they know if they just sit at home they don't have enough self-motivation to get things done. So if that's who you are and you want to drop however many K on college, like, I hope it's a community college or it's a low, like, you can pay it off.
Right.
Because like these people that are paying, you know, I think to go to, Cal Arts, it is like as much to go to Harvard, basically. And it's like, something doesn't add up there. It's like when you get out of Cal Arts and you're working for Disney, like, and that's another thing too, that's a whole other subject. Like, how much does like the best motion graphic artist make versus like an average motion graphic artist? Like, I feel like it's like, well, the average gets 70K and like the really good one gets like 100, and that's about it. But I think you're seeing a lot more. I think you're seeing people actually getting paid their worth by jumping freelance, and it's unfortunate that you have to jump freelance to actually get paid what you're worth. Especially, there's so many things that you have to learn to be motion graphic artists, right? You gotta learn 2D, you gotta learn 3D, now you gotta learn AR, you gotta learn VR, you gotta learn Unreal now, and you got, like, we have to learn so much. It's crazy. And that's like, you still get paid 60K, like that's it. Like, I learned all this stuff and that's all I can get.
And then you got new programs coming out, you know, left and right. Like, is that something I should invest my time and energy into learning and buying? And then you got I like the monthly situation thing, but at the same time it kind of adds up. You know what I mean? Like, oh, if I get this, then I got substance, and I got this, and I got that. And it's like, whoa, I got to do something this month because that's a huge bill that's not generating income, it's taking income. So
it is with Unreal, like, and you're starting to see, like, and it's interesting because I listen to podcasts outside of this realm. I did not know, because like Epic's been in the news because of the suing Apple and everything. Apparently, like, as far as like how I know Unity or Unreal and Epic, like, it's got a very good reputation in the motion design industry. Apparently in the video game industry, they absolutely hate Epic.
What?
Because they're kind of like, as much as they hate Apple for being a gatekeeper, they're their own gatekeepers. So it's like they have exclusive deals and all this other stuff, and so that's always interesting. But Unreal is one of those things where you have an app like that come out, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, well, Cinema 4D should be free. And it's like, well, Cinema 4D doesn't have like this whole other video game thing that it's it doesn't have what's that Fortnite, right. It shows how plugged in I am to the whole video game thing. But yeah, they don't have a Fortnite, so it's like super unreal. Like, I get it, but it's totally unrealistic to have the same and well, I guess there's Blender too, but Blender's the same thing where they have all this investment, and there's also, you know, companies that want specific software just from, so it's totally different situations. You know, like, until Maxon gets like, you know, investor funding from, you know, Microsoft, like, you're not going to see it free anytime soon. But that doesn't excuse, like, and I think that's where, like, we love that competition, right? Like, what's the biggest gripe we have with After Effects? Like, man, I wish they had some really good competition, because it just seems like at times it's just really buggy, and like, man, if they had competition, they'd really get their stuff together and like, and have their you know, fire under their butts. And I don't know if we're just going to see that with like Cavalry that just came out, or Unity, which
do you think that companies should have, like, software companies? It seems like Unreal is like, you can look at it as a reference that, let's say if some, just for sake of just saying, but what if some 4D had their animation studio partner with them, so they don't get 100% of their income just from people purchasing their software, and then the animation industry can kind of push them, you know what I mean? Like, maybe don't do one thing necessarily, because I feel like when Blender comes out, and just appear, the fact that it's free, you know what I mean, which is different tools for different tops, I think, but the fact that it's free, it does kind of bleed over to the industry, and you see a lot of cool renderings, like, okay, well, I guess I got to take a look into that and see what they're doing over there. And you know, when you first come in, you know, money does play a key factor. So I feel like maybe it's a good thing, and maybe we may see things shift up, like when Redshift and Cinema 4D came together, and Substance and Adobe came
Right.
together. Maybe we may see teams form and Megatron this thing out, or what's your thoughts on companies kind of, I guess, morphing into a little different than what they started as?
Well, I wish Maxon bought Substance. I would have said I wish Maxon bought Houdini, but it looks like they're building their own version. And that's the thing too, where you hear people complain about, like, I don't want to pay for Cinema 4D because, like, in many people's eyes, like, well, Blender can just do the same stuff, right? And to some extent, yes. Like, depending on what you need the software to do.
Right.
Like, do you need to do motion graphics stuff? Then, probably Blender, you'll have to jump through a few more hoops.
Right.
I don't know. You might have to jump through a few more hoops anyways in Blender for whatever, but it's also free. And you know what? I'll jump through some hoops if it means I don't have to pay anything, which I totally get. But no one, and I don't know, maybe I just don't have my ear to the ground enough, but no one complains about paying for Houdini, because Houdini does something very specific that Blender can't do, and like Cinema 4D can like try to do,
right,
but not quite, like soft body dynamics, rigid body dynamics, and like you see people like Chris Schmidt like really trying to push the limits of those engines to do the same stuff as Houdini with like a fraction of the complexity. And I think, and I wonder if Cinema 4D, like they're doing this whole node thing now, Neutron, Project Neutron, if they do this successfully, and now Cinema 4D can do a lot of what Houdini, and it's going to take a while for them to do that, right? Like, let's be realistic. Does that kind of justify the cost now to people who are on Blender, or and maybe in 2 years, by I don't know how long it's going to take for them to fully flesh out this node thing, but like maybe by then they'll be built in real time, which you should hope there is, because 2 years is a long time as far as technology goes. Are we seeing more of like, oh well, I can get Blender, but until Blender has like this Houdini power and simulations and stuff, which I don't know enough about Blender to know, but as far as I've heard from other people, like it's not there.
Nah.
Like simulations and stuff is not quite there.
No, I think they just got a particle update maybe 3 days ago.
Yeah. So that's an area where I think that's why there's the complaints about Cinema 4D, because at this point, like you're starting to, and just the developer network of like, why can't someone make a grease pencil for Cinema 4D?
Right.
And I think that is a interesting thing. It's like, why doesn't, I probably can just answer my own question. Like, why don't people make stuff for Cinema 4D? Well, because people have to pay for it, and there's a way less market share. Like if you make a plugin for Blender, like there's how many millions of, I don't know how many millions of people have it, but a lot more people probably have Blender than Cinema 4D, so it makes sense. But yeah, like someone could totally make a grease pencil for Cinema 4D.
Let me ask you this. I feel like you have more of an insight. I was talking to this other guy a couple days ago, and we were just kind of theorizing. Is it possible for Cinema 4D to take Blender, since it's open source, and integrate it into their software? Right, a lot of the key features, you're like, yeah, we're now integrating into our software. Kind of like, I don't know if you OBS and Streamline OBS. They're like the two softwares, and Streamline OBS is kind of like OBS with extra features. I mean, is it possible, since it's open source and you're not going to charge for it, but can you just like make, hey, we're integrating this feature into that, and if you want the Cinema 4D version with the add-ons, but with the Blender have, I mean, I feel like, is it, I know, maybe, do you know if that's possible from a legal standpoint, or?
I have no idea, but that is an interesting question, because you do have Cycles, which uses the Eevee render, right? So, yeah, like, why couldn't Cinema 4D do that? Or is it because, like, well, that's another major 3D software and that's direct competition? So
I mean,
I don't know. That's a good question.
Open
I've
source?
never thought of that. But yeah, you have like, does Maya do any Blender stuff? I don't know. Like, I feel, and it might. And it might be something from like Maxon standpoint where it's like we're a paid app
Right.
and we're adapting some of the stuff from the free software. Does that look kind of dumb on our end?
I mean, but I feel
I don't
like
know.
it'll be a collector. Like if Blender comes with an update, like, well, Sim4D is gonna have that, and then you have all this stuff that Sim4D has. So it's like the base model will be Blender, and then the advanced model will be Sim4D. I mean, a lot of the features are redundant, so you just like kind of pick and choose key features based on audience. But I
like,
mean,
yeah,
it
because
could
I
be
think
something.
I don't know. You seem to know a lot more about Blender than I do, which is like I know zero about Blender. But like, what's one? Because I think the main, like, even I don't know this, is like what's the native Blender stuff, and then what's like, Grease Pencil is an add-on you have to buy, right? Or is that a built-in
I
thing?
believe it's built in. I believe it's built in.
Okay.
I've just been playing with it here and there, but a lot of the things are mostly built. The add-ons, they're a lot of the add-ons are free, but they just don't come when you get the software. You just got to turn them on. So it's like, oh, this is the add-on,
Yeah.
that's the add-on, and then you have the whole plug-in market. So it's very similar. But I noticed from my perspective, a lot of things they're getting Cinema 4D had for years. So
Yeah.
Cinema 4D doesn't get as many updates because like we had that for like 8 years, but Blender's like, yo, we're just adding everything. It's because you kind of like when you first start something, you learn a lot more new stuff. Then
Sure.
to you when you get into more advanced, you're like, well, your learning kind of goes down. The features are not really as fast coming in. It's like, oh yeah, we can do that. And then I noticed people are doing like, oh, you can do this in Blender. Like, yeah, you can do that in Sim4D for the last 8 years. Like, here's the side by side. But
And it's always fun to like, and sometimes it's interesting to see like, Travis David's, he's like
yeah,
amazing.
oh yeah,
He
yeah,
has like an amazing Gumroad store, makes tons of like awesome assets,
yeah,
tutorials. He posted like last week this way to like add decals in Blender because he's been
right,
learning Blender like hardcore. So
yeah.
hopefully he comes out with it. Hopefully, hey Travis, if you're watching this, like teach me Blender, please. But he was showing this thing where you could basically like just slap on 2D
Right.
plain decals
On the
onto
arcade
this like
system.
street. Yeah. And I was like, I think we could do that in cinema.
Right.
And so I tried it and I was like, oh yeah, you can, like using
Right.
shrink wrap and like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's that thing where it's like people are discovering what you could do in Blender, and maybe some people think that's unique or that can't be done in Cinema 4D, and it's like this ground shattering thing. It's like, no, you can do it. You just have to use shrink wrap. That again is like a feature that was added 15 years ago, but it can be done. But it's interesting to see, like I've never thought of that workflow before. So I love seeing like what people are doing in Blender, because I think there's a lot of that, like getting inspired off of like,
Right.
oh, you could do that there. It's kind of like Houdini, right? Where you
Right.
see things being done in Houdini, you're like, how could I do that with soft body dynamics in Cinema 4D? And I think that inspiration's great.
Yeah. What I've been doing, I've been watching Blender tutorials, and Blender and Cinema 4D felt like it came from the same parent, right? They're just brothers and sisters, because you can watch a Blender tutorial and just mimic it step by step in Cinema 4D. Like it's almost one to one. I was even thinking about doing a tutorial where like, let's do it in Cinema 4D, like just getting from Maya and all different softwares and just let's do it in Cinema 4D. You know what I mean? Like let's just do the same, because it's like step by step. And that's one thing when you jump into Blender from Cinema 4D, there's a comfort level there. The interface is a little different, but like learning Cinema 4D and learning a 3D package in general, you can kind of walk in and say, okay, where's my buttons at? Where's my this button? Where's my that button? And then the add-on and then the MoGraph, it's like, you know what I mean? It's very from the same school of thought, I would say. Like when I first tried to learn Maya, I was like, this is totally crazy. This is not even possible. When I jumped into Blender, I was like, this is like a really weird version of Cinema 4D. So the learning curve was really, it's a lot, when you get over the hump, it's like, it's straight. It's a lot easier. That's what I was wondering I was going to do. I have to talk to him, Travis, but I was going to do his arcade. I was going to do it in URender, right?
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Just do a side by side, because it's like the same steps. When you do it, they're very similar. Eevee and URender are very similar pieces of software. And I was just tossing the idea around. I was like, maybe I just tell the EJ and he can do the hard work for me, Just,
if you don't know Travis, I'll hook you guys up. He's one of the nicest dudes.
Yeah, definitely.
URender is interesting because I feel like it's so under the radar. You don't hear a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they have real time already, right?
Yeah, it's real time already, and as well as they're getting ambient, like what is it called? Not screen space, but like global illumination. So that's coming, I think, either end of this year, beginning of next year. I think they're messing with the idea of. I was talking to one of the guys over there. I was trying to slowly push the Sketch and Tune version add-on in there, but I was like, look, because I think what Uranus is based off of a game engine, or the idea is based off a game engine. So a lot of things they're implementing and adding on, like the fog and the subsurface scattering, and a lot of key features over there that's super cool. And it's not really above the, like you said, it's not above the radar, but it's like, to me, it's like it's so similar to Eevee, and it's such an easy renderer to learn. Like it's like maybe a 2-day learning curve. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people are like, which one should I learn? Like, which one's best? And it's like, it's not about which one's best. Like, just learn one and it translates, you know? It's about, like, what do you want to try to do? Like, how do you work? Like, how does your brain work? Like,
definitely.
And download the free thing. Just try it out.
Yeah.
Like, one's different, you know?
Yeah. But the future is, I feel in the next, if we had this conversation 1 year from now, I feel like it's going to be a totally different conversation, because I think it's going to shift. And even looking at your plugin Bendy Limbs, I mean, that's super. I'm like, man, I wish I would have had that back then and then. I could have really used that one.
Yeah. But I mean, that comes from me not really, like, you know, not trying to get all nitty gritty with rigging.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't like spending all that time weight painting and all that stuff. Like, so that, again, was like a text edge effects thing where it's like, I want to do this. Hey, I should make something to make this easier, especially because there's so many people that do want to do character work, especially people that are coming from After Effects and they know how to animate and rig up a character there. Yeah. But then to translate that into 3D, it's just so much more of a learning curve to get up and running. So I'm like super, like, it's crazy how well it's been doing, and I'm seeing, and it just warms my heart so much to see people like, this is the first 3D character I've ever animated in Cinema 4D, and I was like, that's awesome. Like, that's exactly what I want to see. You know, like breaking down the barriers, and that's why you know, I love Cinema 4D, is because it's artist friendly, and you know, I think if anywhere Blender has to improve, it's that. Yeah. Because right now, I just think it's not as artist friendly as it could be. Yeah. And same with Houdini, you know. So that's why it's going to be really exciting to see where the Cinema 4D Neutron thing goes, because man, if they nail that, they're back in the running again, you know, especially if this real-time thing comes out. And
I mean, I feel like the real-time and the that node-based thing coming, I feel like it will just morph, and you're gonna see your internet's gonna be flooded with just so much creation, because I think real-time is it kind of stops a lot of people, like, oh my goodness, I gotta render, it's gonna take forever. But I think just the re-iterative and posting and implementing footage and stuff like that into it, I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be totally different in the next, I don't know, next 5 months, I would say, the way updates come out. Like, it's like, what?
When's Brigade or Redshift RT? So do you use Unreal a lot?
I just started using it. I probably 3 months on it. The first year, I was like, Windbush. I was like, man. That's my guy. Yeah. So you get into it, and it's, I don't know why the first doing the materials was kind of like, how to get my materials going. You watch it, and one thing about Unreal, they have a ton of resources and such an active community. So you post a simple question, and it'll get answered like 10 times, right? Right. So I mean, that's super awesome. And then it has it's like to me, it's the king of real time, right? There's nobody doing that global illumination, and it looks so great. And then you got Octane coming in, and if you want to kick out to Octane or whatever, but so I would say the learning curve is like a hump. It's like a lot of this software, it's like a learning curve is a hump, but if you know Sim4D, then it's like, okay, I have a friend here of knowledge that I can just reapply. And I'm only going in just to render things out, to be honest with you. I'm just kicking in and rendering it out, so it's not like I'm on there doing AR and VR and stuff like that, so I'm not into that deep. But it's a pretty cool tool, and the integration with Sim4D is like it's instead of making a material in Unreal, I make it in Sim4D and I just kick it out. Like it's just that, and it's nice, and it's done really well. And you know how you make your material and it's like everything's all over the place. There's like organized and all that. So definitely, it's a pretty cool. Unreal is pretty cool. I mean, from the software standpoint,
This is the thing I wonder now, is because right now, as far as like 3D artists like Windbush, right? Like we need to like have him in a third stream, like put him on the spot right now.
Pop him in.
I've never asked them this before, but I wonder, like, for someone who's doing stuff like motion graphics, like Winbush's, when, let's just say, like, tomorrow,
Right.
Brigade comes out, or like Cinema 4D comes out with an integrated real-time thing where you just build your shaders in Cinema 4D and you're good. Like, is Wimbush off that Unreal train?
That is a really
because then
good...
you don't have to translate anything. It's just all there, right?
Oh, he's here. He's here. Okay.
He's on the spot.
Did you hear the question, Wimbush? If you can let us know if you heard that question, because that's kind of putting you on the spot.
Because I wonder about that, because and I'm totally ignorant to like what other things Unreal does as far as like, well, the lighting renders really fast and it's just real time. So and you can't get that in Cinema 4D right now, so you gotta kick it out. But what happens when that's just built in? You turn on a button. It's like a Blender and Eevee, right? Where you just UE all day. All right.
Oh wow.
Okay.
All right.
That's a deep. I feel like you need to get him on again. And
that's a deep dive, because it's like if you're using the tool fundamentally for its real time, that's the key reason why I'm using it. And then the integrated tool you already are using, whatever native 3D application you're using, comes with real time. It's a good question. Does that erase, the core reason why you're jumping out? I think for a lot of people, yes, but I think it has capabilities of, I think, AR and VR.
Right.
That is,
or live production.
Yeah.
See, you just said at first it was all about the real time, but I've been seeing it can do so much more.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it's great to have someone like Wimbush just like, blazing the trails and showing us what's possible, because like, I don't know until he tells me.
But I think what the future is AR and VR. I think that's gonna play a heavy role. I know Apple's been flirting with their glasses for the longest time, and I tried some AR glasses at some festival, and I felt like I can see the possibilities of it becoming integrated technology. I could see it, because it felt like after that, and looking at my watch, I was looking at my phone, it felt like I was kind of redundant. I'd rather just have something in the AR space. And then I was, when I first started out, I was working with this paper company, and they were transitioning to trying to do more digital. So one of the things they had me working on was, we would take your phone and you put against the whatever paper, and it would scan it and it would play the new trailers. And so it just seemed like, oh wow. And then the guy was talking about, he was explaining about what you can do, if you were walking down the street, I mean, using your phone, the capabilities, we can just like redo new signs and coming soon, and you can get detailed information. And he was like, if we can implement it into like eyewear or something that is natural. And I was like, all right, okay, cool. But then I seen like this futuristic movie where there's just ads everywhere, ads.
No.
Why? I was like, I don't know if I want to go that route.
Spam popping up.
Yeah.
But I do see when you could travel. I was in Europe last year for the Maxon European tour, and you bust out your Google Maps because you're trying to find out where you're going in Berlin, and I think Google just started rolling out this AR kind of thing where you just kind of scan the streets around you. And it takes that, knows where you're at location wise, and if you're not sure about like, well, is this building thing, like you can literally just look through your phone.
That's crazy.
In AR and see all these things pop up, and like I could totally see that being huge, because then you'll have to keep looking down at your phone and get ran over by a car. Like it's just all up there. And there was also this really cool, I think they had like this 3D animated fox character who like, if you had to go someplace and it was around a corner, the fox would go, and then like it would be matted out. Like the fox would actually go behind the building, and you can follow it. Yeah. So and I think that's the part where you're just starting to see the applications, like all the stuff on like the Mandalorian that everyone's seen a lot. Like that's where it's like, okay, in production. That's dope, especially when you can like have an LED dome as this like real world HDRI, and that's amazing. But like as far as motion graphics goes, like okay, we got this cool 3D fox character, but like as far as motion graphics, like where's that application? I think as far as widespread application for it, the technology's got to get there that. It's as ubiquitous as carrying a phone around. Like you got contact lenses, but are people going to be freaked out about contact lenses because everyone's freaked out about vaccines and like, well, you want to do what? You want to put what in my eye? Like,
5G towers, man.
Is it going to shock my eyeball? Like, right. So I think it's going to be interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, but I think even in that space, I think you still need to build it out, right? You still need to design it, and then you can take it into Unreal. I don't think Unreal, even they had like a modeling thing, but it's very, very basic. It's meant to just put like boxes everywhere. I think that they're gonna be like relying on it, and even with the connection, they're I know they have a great connection with Hassenfratz. They have a great connection with iClone, which I've been using a lot of. And I think the integration, they're like, look, take your 3D to us if you want to bring it into the AR and the VR space. So I think you still got to learn Hassenfratz. You still got to learn a good 3D application and then bring it into to Unreal. But I was thinking like the internet when I was a kid, like you seen the internet, first it was like a distant thing growing up, and then it became on computers, right? And then from that it came
just in it all day.
And then it was in our pockets. So then we take the internet with us. I feel like the next thing's just gonna be on our face. It's like we're just seeing it morph. Because maybe when the internet first came out, it wasn't so integrated into everything we do. Like cash registers was like and the money would come out. But now everything is like
just iPads everywhere.
Yeah, Internet of Things is like just the way it is. But I feel like we haven't seen the evolution of it. Like we're still in the middle of the emergence of the internet. Like we haven't seen what the capabilities are. Because I think AR and VR is just another step. Until we just go to the Matrix and then we're just living in this.
Plug right in. Yeah.
That's what I'm waiting on.
I think the most interesting part of the whole AR VR thing is not like what's the commercial application that clients will start hiring to do a thing. But like I've seen some of the artists at Gunner that are creating and sculpting and modeling in VR, and I'm like, okay, like I could see that getting developed first, like AR application for making the creator's job easier versus something that is commercially viable that clients are going to hire creatives to do.
Right.
I think you're going to see tools that creatives use come out first, and then probably something commercial.
Yeah. I think that's how it would push Apple. You've seen a lot of creatives using their tools, and it made it cool, and I think they just rode that wave. But so man, I appreciate you coming out and blessing us with your knowledge and your energy and all that good stuff, man.
No, this is fun. It's hard to see other human beings and have a conversation nowadays. So it's an honor to be here.
It's the COVID. Just go out there and just hold your breath. I've been holding my breath for just practicing that. But
first conversation without a mask.
Yes, first conversation without a mask. Just hold your breath for like 60 seconds, and you can survive. But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming out here, blessing us, having the energy and whatnot. I've been a huge fan of you for years, been watching your stuff, and I go back and watch, and I'm like, oh my god, this came out years ago, and it's still relevant, and it's still cool, and it's still nice, still fresh, it's still edgy. You was doing style I've been before Spider-Man wave, so a lot of people were after the Spider-Man wave, so that's huge. But I think the future is unlimited. But man, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you blessing with the show, blessing us on the show.
No, thank you for what you're doing. Keep doing it. You got on episode 4. Like, let's get 4. Episode 100. Have me back on.
There you go.
Big celebration.
I make every time something stylized come on, I'm gonna be hitting you up. Like, look, we got to talk about it. We just got to talk about it.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for what you're doing. And checks in the mail for all those kind words, man.
Awesome.